I was like, wow, 3 years. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's the kind of person who the Gracies were fighting. The dude who's like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 3 years. I'm kind of a big deal. And they're like, okay, let's have you spar with this guy over here. Like, the dude had been doing it since they were born. Of course they're going to lose. So I feel like that was a lot of the marketing early on for the Gracies, is just taking their best dude and trying to pit it up against everybody's worst guys, or the guys who were the worst possible matchups. And it worked for a while, but now that MMA has gotten to the point where you have to have all the skill sets, you can't just ride on one skill. Like even Charles Oliveira has to have striking at this point. If he didn't have striking, he'd be getting smashed. Like,
that's been the one part of his game he had to add to himself to get to the point now where he's winning consistently now, because in the beginning he was kind of win-loss, and he had to develop that striking background to kind of coincide with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and it works, especially with his long length.
Yeah, I mean, his Muay Thai style is coming along, but like even against a guy like Gaethje, who's not like almost no jiu-jitsu, wrestling and striking, that's still a tough matchup for him.
Yeah,
like that's still like, ooh, I don't know if he's gonna pull it out. So, yeah,
but let's transition over to Bellator 277. To recap, we're just going to focus on the co-main event and the main event of this one, because there's quite a bit to talk about with both of them. Of course, the co-main event was the finals of the light heavyweight Grand Prix. It ended with a no contest after in the fourth round. Ended the third round, going into the fourth round. There was an accidental headbutt, which they had to stop the fight, and then they wound up just going, okay,
no contest,
we're done, and we're going to call it a no contest. What are your opinions on this and with how it ended?
Like, okay, so this is why you have no contest. Like, this specific occurrence is a textbook example of why a no contest even exists. Because, like, in a 5-round fight, you still got the last 2 rounds. And now I had personally Corey Anderson up 2 rounds. He had the second and the third, in my opinion, and Nemkov took the first.
Yeah.
But the argument still remains. Nemkov could have turned it around in the 4th and 5th and pulled out a decision.
Yeah.
He could have knocked him out. He could have tapped him, whatever. There's still 2 whole ass rounds in a 5-round fight. Those 2 rounds really account for a lot. So the rule is, if it makes it to the 4th round, that's when a technical decision happens.
Yes.
This one didn't make it to the 4th, and it was an unintentional headbutt. That's the other side of it, is this wasn't a strike. This wasn't a knee. This was straight up like Corey Anderson diving into Nemkov's guard and them clashing heads. And it opened up a cut right over Nemkov's eye that the doctor was like, he can't fight with that. That's not going to fly. So no decision, no contest makes sense in that situation. They didn't reach the 4th round even. If they had gone to the scorecards, I think Corey Anderson
3 seconds into the 4th too. The 3 seconds left.
It was close, but they didn't quite make it.
Yeah, but, which is crazy. But going into that moment, of course, Corey Anderson had the success with the grapple, and I was kind of surprised with that, because I thought Venom Nemkov has a big time grappling background, training with Bader, training with Moldavsky. They have a guy fighting on the card today. Of course, Nikita Mikhailov, he's fighting on Friday. So he's really versed, trained in the grappling, the sambo grappling, but then he has really good cardio and very good striking. I felt staying on the feet, Nemkov was having a good success there.
I think so.
But it was just Corey Anderson being able to grapple up with him, getting into the clinch close, then basically just falling on top of him and getting that ground and pound going. That was what was winning him those rounds, and it was kind of shocking. He had good odds on him too going in, and it was just like you said, it was 2-1. It was basically 2-1 if it would have hit past the third, but it didn't quite hit that way. And then when that happened, it was kind of crazy, because it was he's having so much success, and then it just took one small thing where he was ground and pounding, and then he was looking to pass guard, and he kind of dove over to try and beat it. And it just happened that Nemkov moved his head over just a little bit, and that caused the headbutt to occur. And even they both said it afterwards. They're like, it's accidental. It happens. Corey Anderson was pissed, but then he knew what happened.
Yeah.
And but he just didn't know that if it doesn't go into the fourth, that's when you make it a technical decision. I thought he knew.
He seemed a little surprised by that. He was like, "What? We're not going to the cards?" It's like
he took his gloves off and threw them. He was pissed, but then he was like, "It is what it is."
He got over it, yeah.
And then they announced afterwards that they're looking to reschedule the fight so they could get a winner of the tournament in late summer, like July, August, because they already have some of their stuff booked up until then. So that'd be the earliest that they can do. So expect that to happen, because
the longest Grand Prix ever.
Yes,
we're really dragging this shit out.
You can get the whole first round of the bantamweight tournament done.
I know, right?
You might even get into the semifinals before
we finish this.
Yeah. because the heavyweight tournament just was like a year, like which was decent. It went pretty quickly. You had a couple guys that had to bear out, but then you went through it right away. But something like this where it sucks, where like it should have been done now, but they had to move it back because of this headbutt thing, and then it's 4, so it's going to add another 4 or 5 months to the Grand Prix here to finally finish it. And then now
who knows how that's going to influence the results in the future? Because now Nemkov knows what he's got to watch out for. He knows Corey Anderson's game plan more or less. And so, with a good wrestling camp, they can game plan around that.
And it sucks for the bettors, because the bettors were getting Corey Anderson on a good odds there, and now the odds are likely going to change.
Yeah,
and it could be like it might be a more 50-50 fight, or they might even favor and make Corey Anderson favorite. And then now you're going to have people go the opposite way and go for Nemkov now because of what you just said.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. But like the dominance Corey Anderson was showing, that's hard to circumnavigate. Like it was kind of like whenever Khabib would go out, you knew what he was going to do, but he still did it. Like he still did it to everyone he went up against, even though they knew what was going to happen. If Corey Anderson can show up and do that again, I feel like it might be the situation where even if Nemkov knows what's coming, Corey Anderson's still going to do it to him, whether he wants it or not. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, Nemkov does have a great training camp. He's got a lot of experts in his corner, but it seems like between this card and the last big UFC card, when you put a Sambo guy on his back, he's like a turtle. He can't quite figure out what to do after that. Like between him and Jan, they had no earthly idea what to do off their back. So that'll be interesting to see if he can tune up his game a little bit more and pull out a win, because he's had a pretty dominant 9 fight winning streak so far.
Yes, he has. He hasn't lost since making it in, I believe.
Almost lost this one.
He almost did. He got real lucky. He definitely did. And then it's gonna be interesting, because now you can book more of these fights. Like, of course, on the undercard here, Linton Vassell came back to knock out Tim Johnson. I couldn't say his name for a second. And then, of course, Tyrell Fortune came in and beat
That was wild. Cleveland. That was a crazy fight. That was really good, though.
Yeah. So you're going to have these names start coming up to the top and whatnot and do that. And then, of course, in a couple of weeks, you got Ryan Bader defend his heavyweight belt. On top of that, and you're going to have more light heavyweight fighters fight. So it's like, and then there's a name that I'm going to list now. He's been moving back up. He's been Nemkov's biggest threat, Phil Davis. He's riding a 4-fight winning streak since losing that decision victory to Nemkov, which was hard working. It was 3-2, and he's been a guy that's on his way up. Can you imagine a Corey Anderson winning
and going up against Phil Davis?
And then going up against Phil Davis? That would be a really good fight in itself, because a lot of people thought Phil Davis was done, but he's kind of redeveloped his game now. Like he has that speed. Like he used to just rely on his power, but now he's relying on his speed. He's striking, his leg kicks, and then he's starting to take people down a lot more. He's starting to incorporate his wrestling a lot more into it, and like he's looking more dominant. Like he dominated Jorius and Glickis in the co-main event a few weeks ago. in Joyce's hometown of St. Louis. He dominated him with that. And I could see him being one of the next guys in line. He could probably book a fight in June, and then be perfectly in line for when we find out who wins the Grand Prix, because I think he's going to be one of those guys that is going to looking to chop at the bit. Because if you look at when the Grand Prix started, he lost that first round, we said to Nemkov, and since then he's fought 3 times.
That's how long it's been.
And the Grand Prix, and the Grand Prix is still not done. Like he beat Inglicus, he beat Yoel Romero, and then he beat I forget who else he beat. He beat somebody else good, but he's dominated all 3 fights.
He's looking really, really good. I think he's a guy who's positioning himself very well to get the winner of this matchup. Yeah. Another dude tying into the next event who's also doing the same thing in the featherweights, Aaron Pico has been looking like a fucking beast. I know he won this fight on this card against the dude who stepped in at like 2 weeks notice, not even in Bellator. Like, obviously he was going to dominate that kid, but he's been doing that to people inside of Bellator too, inside the top 5.
And then he just like Phil Davis has kind of redeveloped his game.
He's found ways to interconnect everything. He had really good individual parts, but he couldn't bring it together.
Yeah, like he was knocking people out, and that's what he was relying on. Yeah. But now he's bringing in that wrestling heavy game plan in, and it's having big time dividends where he can use that as well. And it just, you said, he can transition into either thing very well. And then you got another name sitting at top also. You got Aaron Pico. What's his name? He just fought. If you look at the
what number is he?
Because Pico was number 4. He had a guy at number 2.
Mads Burnell?
Not Mads. Borks. And then he was in the main event of the St. Louis card. And he won that.
Actually beat Burnell.
He beat Mads Burnell on that one. So it's like, are we gonna get a Pico, a Borks, which I think they fought already too.
It may have been earlier in Pico's career, which means Borks probably won. He has only got 1 loss, and Pico does have 3. So it's probably, if they did, it probably was Borks. But in the rematch, I'm not sure it goes the same way. Pico's been looking really, really good.
Yes, they fought in 2019. Adam Borks knocked him out with a flying knee.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't think it goes that way.
Round 2.
I don't think it goes that way.
Yeah, it's going to be different, but I think they have to run that back, or if they don't, you're going to get a scenario where, of course, we're going to talk about the main event. More than likely they're going to fight again, so you're going to probably have to book Borks and Pico now.
Probably.
But that'll transition nicely into the main event. We had Pitbull Fialho defeat AJ McKee by unanimous decision. Give me your breakdown of this, and let me know what you think of the decision.
I was a little shocked, honestly. Like, I had McKee in the first. I gave Pitbull the second. The third was close, but I think I was leaning McKee in the 4th and the 5th. So I had him up 3. Pitbull had 1. And the third, I think it was the 3rd round, could have gone either way for me. But even if you gave it to Pitbull, he'd still be down 3-2.
Yeah.
And like the thing is like the reason I gave Pitbull the second is when he let his hands go, he was starting to hurt McKee. Yeah. Like, he didn't make McKee back the fuck up. And McKee just couldn't bring that power with him into this fight. And like when I watch McKee striking, the biggest issue I see, he's kind of like, I would say he's kind of like Max Holloway in a lot of ways, but he's got a little more power, but his guard discipline is not good enough. Like Max Holloway has excellent upper body movement and footwork, so where he can have his hands really low and he can have like these weird, wild, open guard type of shit, but he still doesn't get touched that much. And even when he does get touched, he can make up with it for a lot of volume, right? McKee has those holes in his guard, but the problem is when he gets touched up, he immediately goes to wrestling. Like it's instinctual for him. The minute he gets hit with something he feels like he's threatened by, he just shoots. It's like every single time, which makes it interesting to think about, like, if he had someone who had good wrestling, how would that match up? Like, good striking and good wrestling seems like the good recipe to take down AJ McKee. Pitbull has one of those things. He had good striking in this matchup, and he was bothering McKee. But whenever it came to the wrestling exchanges, I feel like McKee kept getting the upper hand. There was that one time, I think the only thing that made it kind of close in the third was that guillotine attempt. Like, it looked really deep and like he might get it. But other than that, whenever McKee would start wrestling, Pitbull was stuck on the bottom and he couldn't figure his way out. Like, he was just stuck down there doing nothing. Occasionally he'd go for a submission, but it wasn't going to happen. And then they'd go back to their feet. AJ was a little bit more timid and he'd kind of jump in and do like little shots, little 1-2s. But then, like, for some reason, Pitbull, as the fight went on, he had less hands. Like, I don't know if he was tiring out or like he just wasn't making his reads, but he had through less strikes. He wasn't letting his hands go. So the idea that he got 2, from what I was hearing, people were saying he got 2, 3, and 4. I was like, how? He wasn't doing. He was either stuck on the bottom or he wasn't throwing enough hands. Because when he would touch AJ, it would hurt him, but he was like touch and then stop. And it was like, what are you doing?
It's kind of like the main in a way it was kind of like the main event on UFC, which we'll talk about, with the moving backwards as like a game plan, which what AJ McKee was doing. But I had round 1, 3, and 5 for McKee, and then I had 2 and 4 for Pitbull. That's what I had. And just like you said, 3 was close, but I still went McKee there because of the volume. If you look at the card afterwards, he had 60 more strikes. He dominated him with the wrestling, and then he had a few submission attempts. And it's just like, if you look at the fight, he was landing more strikes in the rounds that he won. Like, to me, 1 and 5 were clear McKee. 2 and 4 to me were clear Pitbull, and then 3 was handed him in round 3 there. So it's like, how can you go differently? And then to make matters worse is, how did the one judge give 4 rounds to Pitbull? He literally gave the only round that he gave Pitbull to. The only round that he gave McKee. Guess what round?
It had to have been the first.
5. He gave him 5.
Okay, well, that at least was what I thought it was going to be, like the second or some shit. I was like, how?
Yeah. No, he only gave. That guy gave Pitbull 1, 2, 3, and 4, and only
That's
gave.
What I kept hearing was like
5.
Those were the rounds that apparently Pitbull was dominating, was from 2 to 4.
Yeah,
and then 5. Apparently, one of the judges swang it that way. I don't know how the fuck he did, but like, I don't get it. Like, what were they looking at? It's like a whole team of Sal Diamato's up there. Like, what the fuck?
And Sal Diamato did a great job last card.
I know, right? Like, what happened?
But like I get, like, Pitbull was the one moving forward, and McKee was moving back half the time. But McKee was kind of fighting that way, but he was landing a lot of the time. He was, every time Pitbull would hit him, he would hit him twice, even moving backwards. And then they both had their moments, but I just felt like McKee did more. That's why you saw McKee so shocked.
Right?
Like,
he was pissed.
Yeah, I can get it if they would go 3-2, and then they specified round 3 was already close, but we lead towards Pitbull. I'd be okay with it, because then it would have played into what I said, that round 3 was close. Yeah. But to go 4 rounds to right now to Pitbull, this is kind of like the Dominic Reyes, John Jones thing, where the one judge awarded 4 rounds to him, and you're just like, did you not watch the first 3 rounds?
Like, how did that work?
It's the same thing. It's like, what are they watching? Like, I want to get their opinion. That's why, like we said, I want to get their opinions on it.
Give me bullet points. Give me anything. You got to explain how you got the answer you got. You can't just write numbers, asshole.
Like what made you go the first 4 rounds? Like, if you go with that, McKee won it, and that's why McKee was so pissed. And then, you see him walking out, and he was just in disbelief. And he made the comment in post fight that he thinks that he's done it featherweight, and he's going back to 155, which is lightweight, because of this. And coincidentally, guess who the lightweight champion is?
The brother.
Patricky. So it's like, is he going to do that, or did he just say that out of emotion because he's so distraught at the decision that he just said the first thing instead of thinking about it? So it's like,
I don't know, man. Like, here's the thing: he's pretty dominant at featherweight. I think if he moves up, he has more trouble. Like I think a move up for him at this point might be more trouble than it's worth. Not necessarily against Patricky, but there's other people in that division who would give him problems.
I think this is the perfect time to move up because it's not lightweight isn't as stacked anymore because you had all those guys move up, and then everybody has to remember. We got to wait to see if Pitbull even resigns because this is the last fight that was on his deal.
On Patricio or Patricky?
Pitbull.
Yeah, there's two of them.
But one's Pitbull and one's Patricky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Patricio.
You know what I was asking.
Yeah. But Patricio, that was the last fight on his deal.
Interesting. So I guess if he doesn't resign, then like that puts the title up for grabs.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting to see, like McKee versus Borks or McKee versus Pico for the belt.
Because he's made the comments that even if he won, he wasn't sure if he was going back or if he was going to like tamper with the idea of going to UFC. He kind of like Michael Chandler did.
I don't think he does well in the featherweights or the lightweights if he goes to UFC. His skill set is just not quite there. Like it's like I said, his guard discipline is too open given how little upper body and footwork he has, because immediately as soon as he gets touched, he goes to the wrestling. You do that in the UFC lightweights, almost everybody in that top 5 stops you. Well, there's a lot of people unranked that will stop you easy. And they got a lot of power too.
I would rather
featherweight. Featherweight.
I'd rather see AJ McKee in UFC. That's what I would like to see, is him there.
I could maybe see him in the featherweight division, but even then, there's some people there that would give him like Ilia Tapora sitting right there at number 15, even though now he's dabbling in light and featherweight. Right there, if he has to start from the bottom, I don't think he beats Ilia Tapora. I really don't. I don't see him getting past that guy. He's too good.
Yeah, with his age, I think because I believe he's only 26 or 27.
I think he has room to grow, but
he can use a few more fights, grow, and then eventually go at like 30 to the UFC, and then he'd be perfectly good with that. But I feel like it depends on all that. Like I could see him going to lightweight because coincidentally, you mentioned the guy that had his fighter bail out. What was it? Mustayev.
Hold on. Oh shit! I already closed that document. Mustayev. Yeah,
Mustayev. Coincidentally, guess what? One of Patricky's last losses was minus the loss to Peter Querley due to the eye gash. It was to Mustayev in the Ryzen Grand Prix. He lost to him there. So that's why I was looking forward to seeing how Mustayev did in his fight, because he was coming into here from Ryzen, and that was one of the losses that the lightweight champion had. So I was looking to see how his rise starts, because they're getting kind of thin in that division there between Patricky being the champion. Peter Qualley has kind of
he's
been
in
on the loose.
Number 5 right now, but like number 4, Usman Nurmagomedov is 14-0, and he's been looking solid. Yeah. Even Brent Primus, has been 2-fight losing streak, but he's still not bad. Like he's still pretty decent. I mean, the only other guy who has less than 3 losses would be Alexander Shabili. Shabley.
Yep.
But everybody else is sitting on like 6, 4, 4. I'm sorry. Islam Mamedov only has 2. My bad. So Islam Mamedov is another guy who trains with Khabib, I remember. Yeah.
And he just gifted him his first loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first loss as a coach on there. So it's like...
Well, him and the guy who got cheated out of a win by Tim Elliott in the featherweights. That was the other time. Ulanbekov. Tajir Ulanbekov. That was the other. That was the other loss for Khabib as a coach. He was mad.
But I think that AJ McKee stays in the featherweight division. So. I think he stays there. I think that this rematch is gonna occur, and then I think McKee gets the victory, and then with him it looked like he's going to get the the underdog odds. I'll definitely bounce on that as long as he gets those odds, because how can I not? He's gonna come in pissed off. Yeah.
Now, how do you think the Patricio Pitbull ultimatum? How do you think that plays in?
Like there's so many variables. Like with him, having to resign first, and if he resigns, then you got to go with that. Like, I think he would do it.
I don't know. It's like, to me, that sounds a little too salty. And like AJ McKee was even saying, like, I don't want to move down to featherweight for the rematch.
Yeah.
I want it to be a lightweight. And then, like, on top of that, he's got to put up his $1 million as the prize. Like, they're not even making the organization. He's like, no, I want AJ's money.
So if they fight at lightweight, they couldn't defend. He wouldn't defend the title. So then it'd be like,
I don't know how they would do it, to be honest. Yeah. Like that, because even Patricio was saying we'll fight at lightweight. I don't know if that means like the actual fight would affect the featherweight rankings. They'll just agree to do it at a heavier weight class. I don't know if that's what they mean, but like.
And then do they just drop the belt? Because like the reason he vacated the lightweight belt was so his brother would have a shot at a title without fighting each other. And why would he do that if just one fight later he would just go and move up and do a fight at lightweight against McKee? It just
I think it's a contract weight. Yeah. If it, because like both guys are saying lightweight if this trilogy happens, so it has to be at a contract weight. Yeah. If that's the case, does AJ McKee bother with it, or just go, no, I want to fight the brother for the actual belt instead of rehashing this? And also, if he fights the brother, he doesn't have to put up his own $1 million, so he can save some money there. So I don't know. I feel like the reason Patricio said that is because he knew it was unreasonable enough to where AJ McKee might not do it. To where it was like, these are my conditions. I'm going to give you this ridiculous ultimatum. So you'll be like, no, it's not worth the trouble. Because I think Patricio knows he got lucky in that decision. He lucked the fuck out. I don't think he's trying to tempt fate again. But what's he going to say, right? Like, is he going to say, oh, I don't want to fight AJ because I think he'll beat me the next time? He can't say that. So instead, what does he say? Well, okay, you have to put up $1 million of your own money as the grand prize because I want to relive the match that I got knocked out or finished in the first fucking round. I want to relive that, but only relive it so that I can win that moment and not you. That's such a ridiculous request. I think he knows AJ's not gonna do it, and instead go, no, fuck you. I'm not gonna bother. I'm just gonna go beat up your brother at a heavier weight class. If I'm going up anyway, I may as well just beat up your brother instead. So I think maybe Patricio's doing that just to hold on to the belt. This is if he even resigns. He might just retire. Like, let's say AJ McKee agrees, like, okay, I'll put up my $1 million. What do you think the odds that Patricio doesn't even re-sign? He just retires instead of actually going for the trilogy. Because that's what it seems like he might be trying to do to me. It's either avoid that fight completely and re-sign, or like if it does happen, he's like, well, I don't have a contract. I guess I'll retire now.
But let's transition from this to UFC Vegas 51. As you see right there, we had 14 fights on the card, headlined by Luke Muhammad. I'm just going to breeze through the prelims, and we'll work a little bit on the main card itself.
Pretty solid prelims.
Pretty solid prelims, but overall this card was kind of boring with all the messes there. But let's work all the way from the bottom, of course. This one was my favorite. There's nothing to say because it was only 47 seconds long.
Just got knocked out.
And everybody was on backing Kevin Kroom, and I said, don't mess with Alton Haley. He has power hands. He might be like more of a counter guy, and he has the wrestling, but his wrestling comes afterwards. Like I did tape on this, and I watched him fight Baccarat Denan. I'm like, Baccarat was doing more of the combinations, but he was getting fucked up by Alton's power punches because he knows when to throw them.
Yeah,
and of course landed that one shot, and out goes Kevin Kroom. We got Charles Smith chiming in fire. And he picks up that first round knockout literally 47 seconds in. It's like
finished him.
Literally, like those people here that were like, "Oh, I'm putting thousands on Kroom," and I'm like,
"Why?"
I'm going. I'm going. I went Alton Haley by decision because I thought he was going to connect on his punches, but I didn't think he was going to knock him out. because he hasn't been able to do that. But then he just went and went like, watch me now, and then knocked
Looked
him
really
out.
good, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, straight up, he hit Kevin Grimm so hard, his hands were like outside of his control. They were just like out here somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, oh, out.
Yeah. So let's move on from that one. Then we had Sam Hughes come from behind to defeat Estela Nunez by majority decision. Estela Nunez won the first round with her Muay Thai. She was connecting. But then it seemed like she started to slow down because of how fast she was going. And then that's when Sam Hughes took over with her striking and the grappling. I thought she took round 2. He was a little close there, but Hughes got it. But then round 3, Sam Hughes just dominated in the clinch. She took her down, and Nunez just seemed tired. And Sam Hughes was able to pick up her first victory. It was something that she needed. It was crazy because the odds after the first round were like plus like 1,000, plus 800 or whatnot.
Something crazy, yeah.
Something crazy. And I was like, if you think Sam Hughes is going to win, better now. like better now. And then as somebody I know actually did, and they got that plus 800 odds.
Nice.
And I was like, good job. I was like, because Nunez has the skill. She has the Muay Thai. She can hit. She just tires out after the 3 rounds because she can't keep that pace going.
Yeah.
And it's like she needs to start learning how to not just let it all out right away to win 1 round, and then you have 2 rounds where you got to recover for, because that's what happened here. And Sam Hughes took advantage of it. And she didn't really have to do anything crazy. She just had to land some shots around 2 and 3 and take her down and just do enough to win the rounds.
Yeah. Sam Hughes even said, like, we knew she was going to come out crazy in the first, so we just kind of waited her out. And then second and third, it was much more manageable. So good game plan.
Moving on to the next one. This one was the one that it was very interesting to me because I'm not sure how I felt about it. Yeah. Jordan Levitt won by split decision over Trey Ogden. What were your thoughts on this one?
I could see a case for Ogden taking the third, Levitt taking the second, and that first one kind of being the swing round. But, like, it was close. It just depends on how you value what was happening. Because, like, if you look at kind of the breakdown of how it went down, I got the stats here.
Yeah.
Levitt was always leading in strikes, which is weird because you wouldn't expect it. It was just that Levitt's defense was really, really good. And so a lot of what Ogden was throwing just wasn't connecting. But then, like, in the first round, for example, Ogden was on the bottom. So, like, Levitt was on top, but he wasn't really doing very much. Like, Ogden was still, like, throwing strikes and hitting. He had 2 submission attempts that were counted here. So, like, he was busy. But, like, do you value the fact that Levitt was ahead by 2 strikes, had better striking efficiency, and the 2 minutes and 20 seconds of control time, even though he wasn't, like, hunting for submissions? He was mostly just controlling and holding him down, versus Ogden being behind on the striking, being less efficient because of Levitt's defense. And, you know, he was on the bottom, but he was, like, hunting for shit at least. How do you value that? That's why I thought the first round was close. You could really go either way with it.
And I was back and forth, but then what led me to round 1 being Ogden was the fact that he switched up positions late in the round. He got the reversal, and then he had the submission attempt where he had it locked in, and then, of course, the end of the round came in. So I was like, we already say sometimes the judges, the last thing that they see is what they go with, kind of. And that's what I saw, like, the first half was Ogden, second half of the round was Levitt, but then that last 30 seconds was Ogden. So I gave the round to Ogden for that one. Second round was clear cut Levitt for me. He landed all those leg kicks. That was really what it was. There was a lot of leg kicks and a little bit of just punching here and there. So I gave it to him. This is where I'm like, where do we go with this? Because as you see right there, in the third round, Ogden outstruck him 8-4 significantly. Then he outlanded him 16 strikes. He had a 57% over 33%. Yeah. Plus, he had the one takedown. And whereas Levitt did, like, I believe he reversed him or moved it over. So he did have the 2 minutes and 57 seconds of control time.
Right.
But then Ogden had 1 minute and 25. So I'm like, where there do you give it to Levitt? Because I still gave it by like a little bit to Ogden.
I had it for Ogden in the third, and the main difference between the two of them, in terms of that control time, the thing that kind of I think maybe favored Levitt is that he was able to hold Ogden in the same position consistently. When Ogden was on top in the grappling situations in the driver's seat, Levitt was able to get out from under him and get back to the feet, get back to the cage, whatever. I think that may have been what swayed the judges, but I still had it for Ogden because I felt like his striking was better at the beginning. He was able to rally at the beginning. He was able to rally at the end. And even though, you know, he was getting controlled in the bottom position by Levitt, he wasn't just accepting the bottom, and he was still busy. So, like, you know, he did have the takedown. He did have, he didn't have the reversal, but I don't know. That was a close one, but I still had it Ogden.
Yeah, and part of the problem was the fact that I think Ogden thought he was winning the round late, so he just was content staying on the bottom, and they mentioned it. So he didn't kind of fight it because he thought he was going to just go in and get the round, and apparently that wasn't enough for him with the striking and the takedown. I guess, I don't know, like, but to me, it's like, okay, you have 2 minutes and 57 seconds of control time, but it's all like that's part of it. But you got to do enough of everything else to outdo what Ogden did. And it's like Ogden clearly outstruck him by 16. He had the better percentage. He out significantly struck him, and then he had the takedown. So it's like, what part was overdone by that in that extra minute that you have control time? I don't think there was that much, because whenever Levitt was on top, he didn't do anything. Yeah, he just sat there.
He was always just looking for control. Yeah. That's all he really did from the top position, was hunt for control. And in terms of the judges, all three judges agreed on the first and second. The first one went to Ogden. The second one went to Levitt across the board. Now the third is where they disagreed. Mike Bell and Anthony Manis both gave Levitt the third, but Jimichiro Kamijo gave Ogden the third. So I feel like, I guess that one was more of the swing round, but I thought that one was more clearly Ogden, just because like he just put in more work, I felt like. Yes. And Levitt was just like mostly having to react to a lot of what Ogden was doing. And really the only time he put in a lot of work was just holding Ogden down in the top position, which I guess for a judge, maybe that's like visually easier to process. Like, oh, that guy's on top, he must be winning. Versus like they don't really know what they're looking at everything else.
Exactly.
It's harder for them to judge that.
But it's like we say all the time, if this was the old scoring, he would win. But like, they have gone away from that. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to have a balanced attack, judging with the striking and the grappling.
Well, that assumes the judges know what they're looking at.
Yeah, and they're not
dumbasses.
Yeah, and they're not doing it. So it's like a guy's getting lost because you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, which I mean, that's why we need former fighters being judges, not random dudes who used to work in utilities.
Yeah, or architect.
Some shit like that. Like,
but I guess we'll move on from that. Levitt gets another victory somehow. Somehow. The next one, Martin Boudet defeated Chris Barnett by, yeah, you guessed it, technical decision. Yeah. I'll let you go into this one.
Okay, like I thought Boudet was going to win regardless, but this is I think the incorrect call in terms of technical decision. So, like, if it goes to the third, obviously you're supposed to do a technical decision, but that assumes it's unintentional. Yeah. And this is probably one of the ones where I was like, how do you have a case for unintentional? Because it was a hand strike. It was a fucking elbow, like, with the knees and kicks.
Did you hear what their reasoning was?
Yeah, because he turned his head or some shit. Yeah, but, like, here's the thing. You see the guy turning your head. When you throw a knee or you throw a kick, it's harder to stop that, especially with guys who are like Muay Thai based. When you throw a Muay Thai kick or a Muay Thai knee, you literally fling your kick into that hip switch. So that's why you see guys spin all the way around, because they can't stop their leg. There's too much momentum. So when you see a guy misjudge, oh, is his hand touching? Is it not? And it's like a knee or it's a kick from like a Muay Thai guy. It's like, well, he shouldn't have thrown it. But I can understand how you can maybe call it unintentional, but he still threw it, which we'll talk about in the co-main. But in this, that's not even the case. This motherfucker threw an elbow. He had to look at the target he was going to hit and then wind up and throw an elbow. If he had seen Chris Barnett's head turning, he could have stopped and been like, oh, wait, nope, let me do a punch instead. Like, it's a totally different situation when you have the control over your arms versus your legs. Like,
is it bad? The best part of this fight was the acting at the end where you see Barnett on the ground. He's like, oh, I can't continue, blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as they go, okay, we're making it into a technical decision where he knew that it would have went to the judges anyway. He was like, oh, no, I can fight. I'm good. It was like, I want to get that knockout or chance of winning now. Like, he literally changed tunes instantly. It's like like we said, he was acting to get the win by this way, by disqualification, because he knew he would have got paid more. But here he goes, up. Now that I know I'm going to lose, now let me get that fighter's chance in, because if it goes to decision, I was getting dominated in the clinch anyway, because what was happening was he was having success with the strikes out in the open with like the leg kicks, but everything else was just Boudet. Boudet was just able to.
Well, it's because of the clinch game.
Yeah, clinch game.
He had no idea what to do with the clinch.
He was just able to hold up against the cage, throw those knees to the stomach and side were affecting him a lot. That's what did a lot of damage. And it was just throwing those elbows and strikes, but those knees were the big ticket deal there in this fight. And it still cracks me up the acting at the end. No, let me go. Whereas 2 minutes before that, he was like, oh, I can't go. I can't see. I'm seeing 26.
I actually didn't hear what he was saying. I think he was saying he was lightheaded and stuff, which, like, when you take an elbow right to that spot, like, I imagine he was hurt. But I think once he got the inkling of, like, the doctor is not going to be like, because he was saying, like, I'm good. I want to go later on. But I think that was when the doctor was saying, like, oh, I don't think he can keep going. He's like, wait, no, what do you mean? I want to keep going. Like, but like, here's the thing. That should have been a TK, or that should have been a disqualification.
Well, I think they were gonna not let the fight go no matter what. But what's the ref at the time? He coincidentally did both technical decisions in that.
Same fucking ref. Yeah, like someone needs to take his ass back to ref school or some shit.
But I will say is him keeping it consistent. Him keeping it consistent. At least he didn't go one way here and then the other way there.
Right? Yeah.
He was consistent with it, so I'll give it to him on that one. But he basically was like, the doctor said that he can't continue, and then he was like, they were looking at the tape, and he said, "Oh, he moved his head, blah blah blah. I'm gonna go with accidental." Like, I would have to look at it again because I didn't see the actual replay, because I was doing something at the time during this fight,
right?
But I'm like, I would have to watch it again to say that. But like, he was the ref, and then he said that he was moving his head, and it made just enough move to where, like, if he would have done the elbow beginning, it would have hit like his face or whatnot, something like that, where he went like this and it hit the back of his head. I don't know. But
either way, like, he still threw an illegal shot. And that's sort of the problem here, is that, like, I think we should have some sort of like precedence within the UFC, right? Because if you look at the Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan fight, and a lot of fighters were bringing this up, I think the commentators brought this up. They were saying, like, okay, well, if Petr Yan throws an illegal knee, intentional or not, he threw the knee, and it's enough to have a belt change hands. Like, you can DQ win and get a title. Well, then it should apply everything below that, right? Because you only got three basic types of fights in the UFC. You got a title fight, you got a ranked fight, and then you got an undercard fight. If it's like,
thanks for tuning in.
What's up? If you can apply that line of logic to have a title change hands, then everything else should follow that. Like, that's the highest, most important type of matchup you're going to have. So if it works here, it has to work for the undercard fights too. It's kind of like court precedents in common law. If the Supreme Court rules it a certain way, then all the other courts follow suit, because that's how it's supposed to be interpreted. If it does it at the state level, then the state and local courts have to go along with it. Same thing here. If it's enough for a belt to trade hands, then it's like, okay, whether it's intentional or not, he still threw it. The person was unable to continue. That's a DQ victory for the guy who got knocked out and unable to continue. Like it's completely different from the headbutt we were talking about with Nemkov and Anderson. Totally different situation because it wasn't an actual like throwing a strike or no, it was just like you lean forward and you guys clashed heads because you were both happening to move in the same line at the same time. Totally different situation. That's where you do a no contest or technical decision, depending on how many rounds. But like this one and the co-main both should have been DQ losses because like at the end of the day, you still threw an illegal move because like when you have like, for the most part, I think all the fighters are not looking to cheat except for Tom Elliott. But if you tell Tom Elliott, like, yo, you could be up 2 rounds and then just decide, like, I want an easy night, just throw an illegal knee or an illegal elbow, and then it'll go to technical decision for the 3rd round and you're good to go. Like, I don't know why we're setting that precedent, especially, like, we know Tim Elliott's looking for shit.
Yeah, no,
I about that Tim Elliott win.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, I would have to go back to watch the hit slowly to give my opinion on it, but I can see your side of it.
And even the fact that it was with the hands, that makes it worse because like you have more than enough reaction time to look, target it, throw it, and then stop it mid-throw and go, whoop, not going to do that. Let me throw a hook punch instead to the face. Like, if it was a kick, which that's the co-main, that's one thing because the kick your base only has one leg, you're usually throwing it real hard so you don't have as much time to watch and stop it mid-throw. It's a hand strike. Like I don't even if you go the other way on the co-main and say like, well, it was a knee so it would have been harder for him to stop it mid-throw, at the very least this one, no question, because it was a hand strike even.
Yeah, exactly. But let's move on to the next fight. This was Rafa Garcia submitted Jesse Ronson round 2 by rear naked choke.
Looking good in this fight.
Yeah, he looked so different in this fight. But like I thought he was going to do good with the wrestling because Ronson has been prone to takedowns in his fights, and both guys actually made the move up to the division. In this fight, they both made the move up, and I knew some people were on Ronson, but I'm like, just the wrestling had me. I had him by decision, but he was throwing some shots where he was hurting him really badly. And then in my head, I was like, he could win by submission, but I'm not going to go with that because he hasn't done it in a while. And here we go. He gets him down, takes his back, and bloop, tap. 10 seconds left in the round. And I'm just like, damn, like, but like he was so good with how his pacing was. I think that was the big difference. He put a lot in the first round. He goes so fast, and then he kind of tire himself out. You saw in the Grutzmacher fight that he did. He was dominating the first round, and then Grutzmacher slowly took over round 2 and 3. He looked like he could go longer in this one. They said that he was training better, like he wasn't rushing his shots, like he was just doing just enough, and then he was able to kind of mix and match the wrestling with the striking, and it worked. And it's like, if this guy can show up every fight for the next couple of fights, this guy's going to be a problem.
Yeah, he looked fantastic, and like that was even after the point deduction. I forget if it was an eye poke or something like that, or it may have been an illegal shot, but like Ronson was able to continue, and that's what you do. If someone gets an illegal shot thrown on them and they're able to continue, okay, immediately deduct the point, right? Because it doesn't end the match and you got to keep going. So, okay, automatic point deduction. I agree with the ref on that one. Who was the ref on that? Mark Smith. Mark Smith did a great job on that. I was like, perfect. But what was impressive, Garcia didn't stop. Oh, that's what it was. It was an illegal blow on a grounded opponent. So I think it was a knee. That's right, because he thought, oh, his hands aren't touching, but his knees and feet were still on the mat. But even then, he didn't stop. He was like, shit, I'm down a point. That means I better dominate in this second round. So at the very least, it's 9-9. You know what I mean? And then we're still tied up, and he's still up around because he dominated the first round too. So like, yeah, good for him. He just happened to be able to finish it with that RNC there at the end with 10 seconds left in the fucking round. But like, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. If you get a point deduction, that means you got to dominate twice as hard just to keep it even. And if you're already up around, that means, okay, good, you're still in the lead, you know? So he did exactly what he had to do, which is impressive because he didn't have a good record coming into this. He didn't have great performances. He was like 1-2. So like he was a candidate to fight Paddy Pimblett before this. Now I think Paddy Pimblett doesn't want nothing to do with this guy. I think he runs right through Paddy Pimblett with this skill set.
Exactly. But let's move on to the next fight. Drakkar Klose just obliterated Brandon Jacobs by round 2 punches.
Yeah.
This pissed me off because I had picked first round TKO, and he should have had it. I felt like the ref just let him go a little bit longer because he was just demolishing him. He landed like 20 punches before there was even an ounce of defense there.
Right.
But he picked up the victory here. A lot of people jumped on Jenkins on Friday after he did the weigh-in, of course, and how Klose weighed in a little bit late. He had to cut that extra pound, half a pound, but he looked really well. This is a guy that 2 years ago had a great fight with the Benir Dariush where they went back and forth, and he was looking for that bounce back fight to get back into it, and he made it look good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you look at the first round numbers, they probably should have stopped that fight. 66-15 with a knockdown, and 2 takedowns, and almost 2 minutes of control time. They probably should have stopped it in that first round, but he looked really good. Who do you think would win? Oh, I'd win. Miles by KO. Yeah, I agree.
I'll go with that too.
I also got the wrestling. I got the wrestling too. But Drakkar definitely just obliterated Jenkins. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even competitive by the time they stopped it. It was like, oh, okay. I guess now we'll stop it because we didn't need to stop it in the first round for some reason. But really good. Which I think the reason he didn't get that 2 pounds, it was just because coming off of what it's like a 2-year layover or something like that. It's been a long time. Maintaining your weight over 2 years, if you're not fighting and you're not training often, that's hard enough. But getting back into it and getting that weight cut and finding that perfect, all right, I'm gonna be at this walking around weight, the way I can drop this amount of weight to make the cut. Then when I rehydrate and I renutrition my body, I'll be right back at that perfect, walking around / fighting weight. And even if you watched the countdown for the last UFC pay-per-view, Alexander Volkanovski was saying I wasn't at that perfect weight on the night of my weigh-in. I was a little heavy, so I even cut weight, and it was after the weigh-in happened. That was the night before the fight. He didn't need to cut weight. He was like, no, I just wasn't at that perfect weight where I feel my best, so I cut a little weight, woke up feeling awesome, and he did a great job. It's just that fine-tuning of your body weight that you got to kind of get used to as an athlete. If you don't do that for 2 years, then it's going to take you a minute to reacclimate. So I don't think that was really an indication of how this fight was going to go, especially if you look at that Benil Dariush fight. I don't know how you got behind Jenkins, man. That was anyway, that's a solid fight though. I'm excited to see what else he does at lightweight. He looks really good right now.
Exactly. He's going to get back into it and try and get back into that top 15 range that he was at beforehand.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's some fun matchups I could already see. Terrence McKinney, I don't think was even in the UFC last time this guy put those two together. See what happens. That's some dynamite. So important stuff. I mean, she's pretty attractive. Not gonna lie, for 40, she's holding it down. I'm not gonna lie.
So we won't dive too much into this. Penny Kanzad fought Lena Landsberg and Penny won by decision. This was the rematch. Penny won the first one by knockout. She wins this one. It was a lot of in the clinch and striking. She's the boxing background. Lena had the jiu-jitsu, but Penny was able to take it. I won't go too into this. Landsberg looked still kind of rusty with the time off from having a kid. Penny gets the victory, and she can move up a little bit more now. So I won't waste too much into it. I will go into the next matchup though. Devin Clark,
and William Knight.
Devin Clark defeated William Knight by round 3, elbow and hooks KO. What are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, can we just agree William Knight is not a light heavyweight? He's not. He's just not. Do you know what he weighed in at on this fight, being short notice and everything? Do you know what his weight was?
What?
250. Yeah, it was crazy heavy. I was like, that's not a light heavyweight. A light heavyweight, your walking around weight is probably around 115 if you're really lean, maybe 120 if you're on the heavier side, carrying a little extra pooch. 215 or 220. 250 is like, okay, you're a heavyweight who, when you weigh in and you cut the weight, you probably make like 130, 135, something like that. Like William Knight is not a light heavyweight. And just look at him. Like, they're like, oh, we want to get the nutrition in and dial it in so he can lose the weight. I was like, dude, you're not going to lose the weight from nutrition. You have to let that muscle atrophy. He is a monster. Look at him. Like, his arms are like this big around. Like, there's no way he's making 205 without killing himself on the scale. Like, I don't know why they keep him at, because honestly, at heavyweight, he looked pretty good. He was able to kind of keep up with Clark in a way that, like, in the past, he would have gassed out. But he was able to, like, stay in the fight all 3 rounds and keep it at least competitive. I think Clark had better footwork, had better movement, and just was able to navigate the clinch and the wrestling situations way better than he could. But still, like, we got I like that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But, like, William Knight was at least able to stay in the fight, and he didn't look like he was dead on his feet in the second round. You know what I mean? So, like, this is his weight class, no question. And, like, good on Devin Clark. Like, that's kind of a tough one because you don't want to rush in and get knocked out because William Knight's got real power. But, like, he had a good sense of timing to get from, like, the combinations on the hands and then level change and shoot in. And then once he got him up against the cage and on the mat, William Knight just, like, had no idea what the fuck to do at that point. And then he just finished him off there in the third, real nice. But, I mean, yeah, good on Devin Clark. And William Knight needs to stop pretending that he's a fucking light heavyweight because he's not. He's just not, dude.
Yep. And, of course, that's why he had to finish here. Like, I went back and forth. I had Clark, but then I'm like, William Knight at heavyweight, like, I like the options because of Clark's chin, but then Clark was able to avoid those shots.
Yeah. I mean, they both had a way better sense of movement than I expected, especially considering that this was a heavyweight bout. But, like, I don't know, like, Clark came prepared, and William Knight was not, like, dead on his feet because of the weight cut and you know, the fact that he doesn't operate very well in a 205 body. Like, they both just came to bang, and it was an exciting fight. The difference was Devin Clark's grappling. That was the one thing that William Knight could not match, was the grappling, which, I mean, he's such a big dude. Even, like, a little bit of grappling, it's kind of like Francis Ngannou. You teach him the basics, that goes a long way because of his size and his strength. But William Knight didn't seem to really even have that. The one thing he could do was get back to his feet. But even when he did get back to his feet, Devin Clark didn't let him up. He was all over him. So, I mean, I think William Knight, if he starts fighting at heavyweight, I think he could actually start putting together a win streak because he's not like a big fat boy. He's a big strong boy. So, like, he could do a lot of damage in that heavyweight division. I think he should stay there.
Yep. Let's move on to the next one. Munir Lazzez defeated Ange Loosa by decision. Basically, he just did a lot too much volume for Loosa. A lot of this, a lot of that. Like he said, we got a comment again. Munir, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
That's more or less what happened. Like, damn, Munir did really good. I was impressed by the fact that he would just stay in the pocket with Ange. And the reason Ange couldn't really touch him, it was the upper body movement. Like, every time Ange would throw that big loop-in hook, Munir Lazzez would just kind of slip back and then throw a 1-2, like clockwork, every time. Pop, pop, and then just kind of keep moving around. Lazzez looked really, really good. It was like Loosa was not like an easy fight. He was just too small, too slow. He wasn't making his reads correct, and he wasn't listening to his corner. That was the other thing. His corner was on the money, especially with Gilbert Burns over there going, throw the right hand, throw the right. And then he did, and it worked. He was like, go ahead, throw another right hand. And then he stopped. And it was like, no. Keep throwing that right hand. Your corner's correct on this. You got to listen to him. But he looked really, really good. I mean, the numbers tell the story. He led the dance in the significant strikes across the board. 29-14 in the first, 44-26 in the second, 68-48 in the third. Like, easy night. The only one I had as a close round, as a competitive one, was the third. The other two were clearly Lazzez, no question.
Yeah, definitely. But let's move on to the next one right here. Pat Sabatini defeated TJ Laramie by unanimous decision. It was just too much with the combination of the striking and the grappling. This is the guy that is very high on my list right now in that division because he just dominated Laramie. Laramie's supposed to have that wrestling background and the boxing, but he like usually it's wrestling takes the jiu-jitsu, but this was a different story here. Just Pat Sabatini's on a different level.
Yeah. I mean, he looked really good. And the thing is, I forget if Pat Sabatini is a coach or not, but I keep hearing his name in like just outside of the UFC sort of circles. You know what I mean? Like when people talk about really good coaches, like Freddie Roach, he's in that conversation, you know? So I forget if he's a grappling coach or not, but he definitely knows his way around wrestling and jiu-jitsu, but he knows how to connect them and make them work. He's almost like a catch wrestler, you know? He's got that best of both worlds sort of situation going on. And it really showed. Like that body kick to Laramie in the first was the thing that kind of helped turn the tide, I think, for the rest of the fight, because after that, he was able to close distance whenever he wanted. When it went to the ground, he was in the driver's seat, and you know, poor Laramie was like playing catch up the whole fucking fight. So, I mean, TJ Laramie is not a pushover fight. He's a good fighter. It's just he was outclassed, man.
And Laramie and Runson are disgraced to Canada. Yeah, and let's not forget that the racy fighters are a perfect 13-0.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
good for them.
Because between Sabatini, was it Pat Sabatini, Andre Arlovsky, you got Jeremiah Wells, and then what's the fourth guy's name?
Already 3 banger names, like between Sabatini and Wells. Like, damn. 2 solid fighters.
Exactly. But he dominated this one. I can't wait to see him break that top 15 soon because I feel like he's fought 4 or 5 times, and you would think that by this time he would crack that top 15.
Yeah, right now I think he's sitting at 4-0 with this win.
Yes.
The problem seems to be that like a lot of the names on here, he seems to be fighting down a lot for some reason. Like, I don't know why. Give the guy a fight up, like a significant fight up. Like where he's at, relatively speaking, he's somewhere in like the upper 30s, closing in on like the lower 20s. Give him someone like Alex Caceres, who was just in that top 15.
Yes.
Or maybe like Hakeem Dawodu, who always kind of floats up there. I know Andre Feely already has a dance partner, but like Cub Swanson, same thing. He kind of floats up there, but never quite makes the hump. Mm-hmm. Give him one of those guys, and then the next fight he gets, give him like, oh, dude, you know what would be dope? Would be Mavasari Evloev. That would be a fucking banger to watch those two wrestle it out.
Yeah. You got to do one of those.
Yeah.
Definitely so. But he's definitely going to get a fight up, I think, in the next one because you can't keep having to do 5 or 6.
Yeah.
He said Sabatini was literally punching down because Laramie is only 5'2". Or something
like that. Yeah, he is a short guy.
Yeah, he is. So
for the division, especially,
yeah, that is what it is. But he's definitely going to get a good fight afterwards. But
I hope so.
Let's move on to the next one. Like I said, this wasn't a very exciting card, so it's like I'm moving through it very quickly. Yeah. You had Myra Brenna Silva defeat Yanin Ru by unanimous decision victory. I'll let you get started with this one.
I mean, it was just the power difference. That's what it was. Like whenever Bueno Silva would actually let her hands go, Wu just like felt it every time she felt those punches. So it was like, yeah, I mean, it was kind of deceptive to watch because you wouldn't think Silva was actually ahead in significant strikes in a lot of the rounds, which she was. But it was like, I think it was because she was slow to start. I like the first half of the round. She was like kind of slower, hanging back, making reads, and then she'd kind of get started after halfway. But I had her taking pretty much all 3 rounds. I think maybe the third was close, but like, this was just the difference between power and movement. And ideally you want to have both, but like, I think Mira Buena Silva found her weight class. Cause that was the other thing is when she got taken down, I think it was in the second round, she actually fought back to her feet, which is what you're supposed to do. But like in previous fights, she's lost because she's just hung out on the bottom. So I think she's found like kind of the right combination of carrying a weight that's comfortable, having enough power behind her because she's carrying a little bit of extra mass, and also like just not making basic mistakes. I think part of that might have been like she was tired when she hit the mat in the past because she had to cut a lot more weight and maybe wasn't rehydrating as well as she should have. So the energy wasn't there. Versus now when she rides a little heavier, she's got more energy because she's not having to kill herself to make the weight. So I think this is going to be a good weight for her going forward. But yeah, I had her basically taking all 3 rounds.
Yep. And like I've noticed how like she's like a submission specialist, but she's been ever improving that striking of hers. It's looked pretty good, and she had moments where she went through adversity in this one, but she finished the 3rd round very well, and I thought that's what we need to see here in this matchup, because Yana Moore was going to come in and needing the fight, and then of course Brenna Silver was able to sneak it out in the 3rd.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see who they'll match up with, because there's only like 20 people in this whole fucking division. So it's like she'll probably be breaking into that top 15 pretty quick, just because there's not too many matchups until that happens. If you're in this division, it's very small.
Yep. But let's move on to the next one. We had Andre Fialho knock out Miguel Baeza in the end of the 1st round. This fight was looking like it was going to be a good one until Baeza was caught with that shot.
Yeah.
And of course, I think Baeza is at the point of no return now with his chin.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Baeza, because like I kind of expected him to start a little bit slower, kind of be not as heavy on the gas at the beginning of the fight, make his reads, and then kind of get going maybe halfway through, and that's what happened. Yeah. But then like all of a sudden, Andre Fialho, I don't know how to say that last name. I'm not Portuguese, but like he got in that clinch and he just started throwing strikes from inside the clinch. And who knew one of those uppercuts would just stun Baeza so bad. And that's just what led to the finish. The fact that he didn't have that chin for those uppercuts, which like from that range, they didn't look like big power shots, but they were enough to take Baeza's equilibrium from him and put him out of the fight. Which kind of sucks, because he looked pretty good when he was turning it on. It was just like, I don't know, something. I think part of the issue is they were saying like he changed a lot. Like he was like, oh, I changed this, I changed that, I did this, I did that.
He changed my
social circles, like all the things. And it's like, well, when you were winning, you got to keep in mind that there's a reason you were winning. It's usually the people around you, where you're at, the coaches. You're so like when you change too much. Well, then that's a recipe for potentially failing, because if you take all the winning factors out and put them in with unknown factors that aren't proven, it's like you're gambling. So I think he just changed too many things.
I think it was worth the try, because the thing that made him lose was what made him lose the last 2 fights, and that was his chin. Yeah, and I thought he came out strong. He came out doing good, but it all comes back to the same thing with him, and it's his chin and taking shots like that. So it's like. Yeah.
I feel like you can change things, but there's got to be a good reason to change it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm losing, so I'm going to change everything. Yeah. It's like you're not distinguishing between the things that got you to the dance when you were winning, the good stuff, versus the stuff that's holding you back. Because you got to understand the difference and then go, okay, I know this is holding me back because this reason, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to change it. Because if you understand the why, that gives you a reason to change. I feel like Michael Baeza was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and he was just changing everything. But like, I feel like if he had a good coach on either of the changes, the guy before, the guy he changed to, they would have told him, hey, looks like your chin is the problem. We should probably work on your boxing and your upper body movement, because you just leave it up there. It's just hanging up there and it gets caught all the time. We should fix that. But nobody told him that.
Yeah. I think Fialho earned like at least a shot at like the fringe of the 15 range, because Baeza was just out there a couple of fights ago. He was in that top 15 when he lost to Ponzinibbio, and then he lost to Chaos. Yeah. And I think he's earned that shot to get at least a fringe shot to break into the top 15 now.
Yeah, I mean, this is only the second appearance for Fialho.
Yeah.
But like, I think I could see him maybe doing like Tim Means, Nico Price. Hell, give him fucking Kevin Holland. See how that goes. Like,
I think Kevin Holland would be a good one.
I think I kind of like that matchup. So like, fuck, I do Kevin Holland. See how that goes. Seeing as they're both like kind of new to the division in general, I think that would be a fun fight regardless. But it's also kind of a good test for both of them. So that'd be a good place to go.
Yeah. So let's move on to the co-main event of the evening.
Oh boy.
Caio Borralho defeated Gache Omar Gachiv by technical decision. Okay, I'm just going to buy my opinion right away on this one, and then go into the technical decision part of it. I thought Kai did very well with his distance striking. But what caught me the most was the grappling. That I didn't expect how well he was going to do there against a guy like Gauthier with the Sambo background. And he just, like, I was leaning towards Gauthier going into this, but then I talked to you a little bit last week about going into it, and then Chris Curtis made the comment in that Twitter live thing that he has trained with both guys at Extreme, and he was confused at why Gauthier was so big of a favorite in this matchup and why he was the favorite. He thought that it should have been closer.
Right.
So that was like a red flag for me. Like, really? And then I looked into it, and then I wound up switching to Kai by decision. I had Gauthier by decision, and then I switched to Kai by decision because I'm like, let me watch this again. And then I was like, I like his movement, and I like, as long as he can keep a distance with that karate stance, he'll have the chance to like steer rounds by volume. Yeah. As long as he can stuff the takedowns. He stuffed the takedowns, and then he took him down twice.
Yep.
Like this, and I was like, whoa. And that caught me by surprise. I'm like, if this guy can do that, and he's not known for it, imagine what he can do after when he starts like growing as a fighter, because this was his first fight. He was debuting here and on the co-main event at that. So like, I was very impressed with what he did. And then going into of course, we know going into the knee or whatnot, I thought this one was very close. And I'm glad that they did it the way they did it, because going into it, you could see him get up, and then his hand was literally just about off. Like it couldn't be any closer to being off, but not being off at the same time. And he tried to time it, and which I get it, and that's why they called it. And he was kind of surprised. He was like, oh, he's moving his way up. And then, of course, Dan was like, but his hand was off, or his hand was on, or still, yada, yada. I felt like it could have been fringe, because I felt like it was almost off anyway. But like, he hit him, and then they said he couldn't go. And because it was in the last round, you got to go to Dan. And Dan had said, okay, first, it gave him the point deduction. I'm like, oh shit, he made that decision fast. And I was like, the first minute, he was like, point deduction. I'm like, oh geez, what are they going to do now? And then they go look at it, and he's like, it's going to go to technical decision. This is what happens. I'm like, why? And I'm like, why did they not just call for it there? And I guess it's because of the first fight that they called, and they just kept it constant with what they called it overall, which kind of, and it's crazy because both guys that did it were dominating the fights anyway.
Right.
So it's like, okay, but I think what the reason that he made to call it a technical is because the doctor had looked at Gauthier and said that he could continue. And that's what I remember. He said he could continue, but Gauthier didn't want to.
I didn't make sense of all of that, but like, my thing is like, okay, so if you deduct a point, it's because you recognize intentionality.
But
that's the point deduction.
But apparently he took the point away afterwards.
Well, they took it away before the doctor stepped in and made the final say so. Yeah. But like, if you're gonna deduct a point, then you're saying, okay, that was intentional. Can't do that. Okay, then it doesn't go to technical decision, because if it's intentional, it's a DQ. Like, you can't have it both ways. And the commentators had a good point. It's like, if you're recognizing that it's an intentional shot by deducting the point, then okay, then it's a DQ if the fight doesn't continue. But if you're going to say, oh, okay, it was unintentional, then there's no point deduction. You can't have both. Yeah. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So it's like, the fact that he deducted the point means it should have been a DQ loss. And here's the thing. I don't think it would have really mattered too much for Caio, because he was so dominant in this fight. Even if he had gotten disqualified and lost, they wouldn't have made him fight down. They were like, okay, shit happens. But at the same time, like, as a fighter, you got to know that knee to the head is always risky, which means you should have more tactics than just that. Yeah. If you see it, personally, I'm a big fan of kneeing into the calf. Like, that's something I picked up from combatives. It's extremely painful if you do it correctly. Like, you'll literally drop somebody in that wrestling position, it's perfect because you can compromise their base, drag them down much easier. Even then, there's knees to the body. There's like foot stomps. You can punch them in the face. Like there's a lot of different options. Yeah. And so in that position, you got to have the judgment to be like, okay, I'm not going to throw the knee because it's too risky. Let me pick something else. Hell, even throw like a punch to the face to pick him up a little bit and then throw the knee to the head. Like just you got to have that sense as a fighter. And like, yeah, it's his debut, so he's still kind of new, and you know, he's maybe not used to operating at this level, debut jitters, whatever. Doesn't matter. He still threw it. And the fact that they're acknowledging intentionality means it should have been a DQ loss. But I don't think it would have slowed him down in terms of like his rise through this division. I think everybody recognizes how dominant that performance was, and everybody's looking to see him fight some new talent. Especially in the middleweights who are pretty stacked right now with grappling talent. There's a lot of really fun matchups he could do. It's just like, I don't know what the fuck was going on with that reffing. Yeah. Like the reffing was all over the fucking place.
I felt like his hand was just enough off to where it wasn't, because I could see a little bit of gap between the floor and his hand when they slow-moed it. I could see the gap. And then when he hit him, like it was close, but I could see it. So to me, I felt like it was a clean hit. But I do agree with you in that there's so many other spots you can hit unless you like fake him out with it and then wait until his hands come up and then you do it.
Yeah, even pop his head up a little bit with your punches and then go to the knee like that. That's I don't know why nobody's doing that. Everybody's throwing these illegal ass knees.
We got Insight chiming. This is late for you, Insight, but then I forgot that you don't have teaching this week. What up? We're almost done the UFC recap. But thanks for tuning in, dude. Yeah, check out the Insight Lounge on Wednesdays and Fridays on YouTube under his name Insight MMA. Definitely check him out on his channel and give him a subscribe and follow on his videos. Yeah. He said, "I'm disciplined during the work week." You are. That's right. But but he not this week.
Not this week. Though. It was an off week.
Off week with the spring break. But definitely, Kai dominated this fight, and I'm excited to see what he does next.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. This division is getting more and more stacked with grapplers, and like. He's got very unique flavor though, right? Like you got guys like Julian Marquez, Phil Hawes, what's his face? Andre Petrovsky. I don't know how I couldn't pull that one out of my hat. But yeah, there's a lot of like Nick really good dudes. Nick Maximov's another one. Yeah, like there's a lot of really solid grapplers. And like most of them are wrestlers though. He's got a very unique sort of jiu-jitsu flavor. And I think it's from all that wrestling and grappling with Damian Maia as his teacher. It really paid off. And like throwing that into the mix, Kyle Dawkins is another one. Some of those guys, I'm not sure how they would match up against that particular flavor of jiu-jitsu.
And then he also trained with Lyoto Machida.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, Brazilian circles, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you would think the Russian with that Sambo would have the top side advantage, but he really didn't. Which makes it interesting to think about how he would deal with these other guys who are wrestlers and like that topside advantage. Could he turn the tables on them too?
Yep. We'll wait to see who they book Kai with next, but he's definitely going to give a very good fight.
I also like that he's a former chemistry teacher as an up-and-coming teacher myself. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. But let's move on to the main event of the evening. We had Belal Muhammad defeat Vicente Luque by unanimous decision victory. Point blank, it's just the game plan idiot. We were just talking about this before we came on. A lot of people are complaining that he was running away, moving, and it's like, what did you expect him to do? Going in here, if Luque was going to be the better striker in, but I felt like the wrestling was going to be Muhammad's path to victory here. Yeah. I thought he was going to be able to come in, use that wrestling, get the takedowns, and then on the feet, just move around, throw, move, like just like Floyd Mayweather style. You've seen a lot of these guys do that now. And it's like, this is exactly what Michael Venom Page does. This is what Israel Adesanya does. Yep. They move around. And then they even said it before with Belal. He was circling around Luque's power favorite side, his power side, the whole time, so he couldn't throw it majority of the time. He would throw, and then once he threw the one punch and then throw the second one, he'd come in and boom, he'd be gone. He said, good entries by Bilal. Is he juiced? No, definitely not.
I doubt it.
Yeah,
he'd be a lot bigger if he was juicing. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, those are some shitty ass steroids. They're not even doing the job.
No, he has that. He has the high school wrestling background. That's what he has. And the reason that he's been so successful lately has been he's relegated to it more. Like he can stand up with you. He was doing it early in his UFC career. But since then, this 4 or 5 fight, actually, I think it's 6 fight win streak now, 6 or 7, actually, if you take away the eye poke. He's been using primarily his wrestling and doing that. He said, use mine as the man Colby. It's his Walmart. Bilal is Colby's food stamps. What does that make Shemaev?
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe he's Tarjay.
He's the new target. He's the new kid on the block.
Yeah. Which I mean, like, I kind of had Bilal taking this specifically because of the grappling, and like Luque knows his way around the ground. He's slow though. When you watch him with Chiesa, he doesn't move like real crisp and real fast. His transitions are like, all right. Let me get. Okay, all right, okay. Let's move to this position now. All right, okay. Let's try to get this Darce here, like whoop, and then he eventually gets it.
Yeah,
but he's not fast. Bilal is fast on his transitions, and that's where I thought he'd have the advantage over Luque. Yeah. And actually, Bilal only had a little bit of high school wrestling knowledge. He was actually saying, if you watch the countdown, and they did a special thing. They did another one. I forget what it was called. I think it's like Road to Gold or some shit. It's like a new thing I haven't seen before. He was actually saying, he's like, I really didn't start MMA until my like 20s. Yeah. And I was the dude coming in with like almost no knowledge. Anybody's like, why do you think you're good enough to like go to the UFC and be as good as you are and shit like that?
Should I have Amazon?
He's Amazon. But like, he's actually developed his wrestling way more now than he ever did in high school. And that was the first go around with Luque. He wasn't confident in his wrestling. That's why he stood and trade with him, and he got knocked the fuck out because he tried to stand and trade with Luque. This time, you knock him out. Luque just he was behind. He was constantly a step behind. That's what it was.
He was too hesitant, waiting for the right moment.
Right,
and because of the movement of Muhammad, and Muhammad was making him pay for the being too timid with the punches. He was rating too much. Like. I was talking to a couple of people. The Luque is very successful with his hook, and that's what he caught him with before.
Hook, that little short one.
But for somebody who strikes very well like Luque, you would think he would have a jab in his repertoire, but he doesn't use a jab at all.
Yeah.
And if he had a jab, this fight could have went differently because he could have used that as like a defensive tool to push him back and not allow him these entries. But that's what he was having problems with. And then, of course,
I also don't see why people were bitching about Bilal Muhammad running away. What about when Luque fought Thompson, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? Yeah. Was Thompson running away too? And he was constantly moving and cutting angles, and Luque couldn't keep up with that because he just kind of lumbers around the ring like this.
And then he beat him.
Yeah, exactly. He kicked the shit out of him in striking.
Yeah.
Bilal Muhammad did the same sort of movement. He just did grappling instead. He just wasn't wanting to stand and trade. He's like, okay, we'll wrestle. Yeah, didn't need takedown defense. And his takedown defense just wasn't there. And like, that's the thing.
But they dove into how Bilal Muhammad was entering into him. He was kind of faking him. He was actually going in like he was going to strike, and then he would go into the takedown from his takedowns
were very unique. He had that long leg hook, that you really can't. There's not very much you can do.
And then they were saying like usually it's your lead leg that you would jump from to get the takedown, and then that's the leg that Luque was attacking. But with Muhammad, he uses his back leg to get that torque, which is unusual.
Well, in wrestling, it's actually not that unusual. It just depends on who your wrestling coach is. Like if you look at Teach Me Grappling, Peterson grapplers, That guy, he advocates for your back leg. And the idea is that like you take like a small half step and then you project forward from the back leg because you're faster and it gets you a deeper penetration step. And I've seen a lot of coaches saying the same thing. It just kind of depends on who your trainer is. It's not that unusual. It is unusual for the UFC because wrestling MMA or MMA wrestling is different from wrestling. So most guys in MMA wrestling tend to favor that front leg because it's faster. That's the only difference. You can just get real close much faster, but going from the back leg gives you a lot more momentum and a lot more power in your penetration step. So it almost guarantees you're getting the takedown. Bilal did that. On top of that, he snagged that front leg when he was moving forward. When he would distribute his weight from his back leg, he would, instead of just stepping forward into a penetration step like a wrestler, he would actually hook on Luque's front leg and then drive forward to where Luque really couldn't sprawl out of that. Like you can't do very much. The main thing is prevention. And Luque's not great at that either. Like preventing, sprawling, these are not things Luque historically does fantastically well. Even Michael Chiesa got his ass down, and Michael Chiesa hasn't looked good in like a year and a half. So like his takedown defense is always a little step behind, but like Bilal Muhammad's takedowns and the way he would enter, like there was really nothing Luque could do. And so it was just a matter of moving around and finding the angles to make his entries as successful as possible. And he got a takedown in every single round. So it's like, how is somebody going to say he's running away? Are these the same people that are like, oh man, Israel Adesanya controlling the ring with his traps? How's he doing it if not with his movement? If you looked at the Gutierrez versus Dana fight and you're like, man, Gutierrez's fucking movement and his footwork was on point, then you can't say shit about Bilal. You can't say shit about Bilal. Yeah, exactly. When you cut the angle like that, Luque loses a lot of his power, but he's also not able to keep up footwork wise. So like that's honestly the way you beat Luque. We've seen Stephen Wonderboy Thompson do it. We've seen Bilal do it. Most of the time, if you're faster and you can move more than Luque, you have a huge advantage. So like he was just using strategy. Like that's it. He was just using strategy.
And like I told you before, Gilbert Burns came to Bilal Muhammad afterwards and said that what affected Luque the most was the leg kicks, the leg kicks to the body. That he was kicking them very hard, and you can notice the shots. They even said that they were hitting him hard. You wouldn't know because Luque doesn't showcase that he's hurt. He got that poker face, which helps out. But they were doing a lot of damage, and you could tell that over time he was slowing down. But he just couldn't stop the takedowns for anything. Like it was like one each round that he was having them in. And this is why I said like I was heavy on Bilal Muhammad like all week. I was like Muhammad by decision. Like I know he's not gonna finish him like with his hands or not, but I know he could outstrike him because he does a lot of volume in his fights. But I thought it was going to be a heavy wrestling based where he takes him down. I even said 3-4 takedowns and he had 5, so I was one off with my prediction there. But I thought he was going to have success with it, and I thought he was just going to win by decision, which he did. He took 4 of the 5 rounds. I don't know why the coach would tell him it's 2-2. You're good. Yeah. Just still go out there and win last round. It's either 2-2, then you go and win it just with enough to win the fight 3-2, or you know that you're down 3-1, and then you have to look for the knockout. I think it was bad advice there. I don't
think it was terrible. Like, that's the thing. Bilal's not knocking Luque out. He's just not. I don't necessarily think he's tapping Luque either, because like Bilal hasn't really shown that submission side as much. So I think if you tell him 2-2, it just means don't let up off the gas. Just don't, because if you tell him it's 3-1 favoring Luque, then I think he gets panicky. He gets antsy. He gets anxious, and that's what kind of leads to mistakes. Kind of like Aljamain Sterling fighting Jan the first time around. He was rushing everything. He wasn't having good setups in his takedowns. He was running into everything. And then Jan would just wait for him and reverse it. Like, I feel like if you tell him it's 2-2, Muhammad's like, okay, cool. Just keep doing what I've been doing. You tell him it's 3-1, he might get anxious and he might try to rush things. And then he might make mistakes. And those mistakes would be where Luque would be able to win the whole thing with like that tight short hook, a nice tight uppercut. Those are his most powerful punches. And if he starts making mistakes, Bilal would fall into those power strikes. Did his thing, but boring. Yeah, was the better striker. Yeah, obviously, but that's how Bilal wins, which is why his call out was kind of a head scratcher. He called out Colby Covington, and I'm like, I don't know about a Bilal Muhammad Colby Covington fight, because to me that's a wash. That's 100% wash. It would be favoring Covington if he was still doing the high volume striking, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's doing that low to moderate counter game. Their wrestling would basically cancel out. And Bilal is a low to moderate counter striker. I mean, he's a little bit more active in terms of leading the dance, but their hands are a wash and their wrestling is more or less a wash to me. Neither of them are doing submissions on each other. So I don't know. It'd be a decision win. It'd be real boring, but I don't know enough to tell you confidently who would win that. I like Muhammad better. I think everybody universally likes Muhammad better, but I don't know, dude.
But they both wrestled. The one edge I give Colby is his threat for submissions, because that's the one thing that Bilal doesn't have. Is he doesn't threaten. He doesn't threaten with subs. He doesn't get them. He doesn't train that much into it. It's just wrestling and his striking.
I don't know if they even get that far, because usually when you get two wrestlers, they don't even touch the mat. You know what I mean? When they're that good, I think they just stand and trade hands. But Covington hasn't been doing that high pressure, high volume striking, and he doesn't have the power for low to moderate counter game. So it's I don't know. I think they both be throwing at roughly the same rate, and they wouldn't knock each other out by the fifth. I don't know. I don't see Covington knocking.
I don't, because Colby doesn't have that knockout power.
He never has.
It's just going to be volume versus volume.
It used to be his pressure and his gas tank that would break people, but he's not doing that with the hands anymore. And if he can't do that in the wrestling, first of all, I think Bilal Muhammad's gas tank is as good as Colby Covington's, if not a little better. So I don't think he can rely on that regardless, but he's not going to go in there high volume because his coaches actually coach him against doing that. Yeah. They did it during during his last fight with Masvidal. I think it was the third round. He came out and started doing heavy volume, and the coaches were like, stop. You got to go back to slow it down, pick your shots. They don't want him doing heavy volume. So I don't know, that fight seems like a wash to me. I don't see Colby Covington knocking him out. I don't see Bilal knocking him out either, though. I don't really see it going to the mat that long. Maybe against the cage. I think the clinch wrestling against the cage would decide who would win that fight.
Yeah, definitely so. But it was a great performance by Muhammad. He moves up one slot to 5, whereas Luke is 6. You still got to wait because, of course, with the title fight that's supposed to take place at some point in time this summer, we don't know when they decide to sign the contracts. Yeah. He said Covington wins. I honestly don't know.
Maybe to me it's a wash. I can't say confidently one way or the other. You might be right. You might be right.
It could be, but then at the same time, I've seen better things out of Muhammad too. I like his leg kicks more than I like Colby Covington. They both have great cardio. They both can go 5 rounds. They both move around. I like the movement of Muhammad better, but I do like the overall just gas tank of Colby Covington. I think the fact that he constantly is moving forward is what is really good with Colby. He said Colby fought Usman 2 times too, but that's a stylistic matchup though. Yeah. When you look at it, and he did very well, but then he lost both times.
Yeah.
So it's you can only go to, and I'm a Colby guy, and you can only look at that so much with that. It's
now, to be fair, I think Bilal against Usman, I think Usman runs right through Bilal at this point with his stand up and the fact that he could keep the mat on the feet.
We haven't seen anybody take him down, so how can I say against that?
Right. That's the thing. If it doesn't go to the mat, it doesn't favor Bilal, and Usman's got the power. So I do feel like Usman would run right through Bilal right now as it stands. Yeah. Bilal's not done growing yet, though. So I think in the future, Bilal could be a real threat to Usman, but as it stands right now, I don't think he is at this point in time. Yeah. But With Covington, I still feel like it's a wash. Like
Yeah.
that's a really tough one to call. You might be right. You might be right. It might be Covington would be able to outlast him, but
he said, I met Luke once knocking Bilal out in 5.
Oh yeah, I bet he wants to.
Colby better tank.
You might be right. To me, it looks about the same from where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
If it actually goes into the cage, we might find out something different, but it's hard to call from right here because they both have a lot of stamina.
Colby is better than Bilal. I honestly think that they're very similar.
Yeah, they are in a lot of ways.
To be honest, it's just that one is better at one thing and one is better at the other. Because I honestly,
and those differences are marginal. To be honest, like they're marginal. Because like a good fight camp for either one could put them over the edge.
Yeah, because you got the moving forward of Colby, but then I think the wrestling kind of cancels each other out. And then I like the movement and how Bilal can move around in a circle, move, hit, whereas Colby kind of try and just forces his striking on you at times, and he puts himself in there, and like he doesn't have the power, but he thinks he does. Whereas Bilal knows I don't have power, but I know I got volume, and which they both do, and that's what happens. He said no.
We'll see, I guess, because that may end up coming to fruition if Khamzat and Covington doesn't. Khamzat runs right through Covington, no question. No question, dude.
Yeah, I think Chimaev beats both of them. It's Colby fought Usman. You really can't factor Usman into this because he's not into this equation. It's Colby and it's Bilal, and then you put Chimaev in, and Chimaev can beat them both.
Right.
With one hand behind his back. With how he is. Don't matter. They all the same. They are the same. That's why I don't think it makes a difference who they are, like within those fights, because you can also say that that Bilal dominated Stephen Thompson, who beat Luke. You could go that route if you want to.
Look, at the end of the day, it's like any given Sunday, you know what I mean?
Through Colby, but then Colby hasn't beat Muhammad either.
That's true. They haven't matched up yet, which is why this is a hard fight to call. Because, like any given Sunday is the thing. Like everybody was saying that about Pena and Nunes, and look how that turned out. You know what I'm saying?
If you want to play, he said Bilal ain't getting him to the mat. Usman always run through him.
I think Usman would. Yeah, I think Usman would. If you want
to play this game though, Colby had to beat an old Robbie Lawler to get the interim title. Then he fought Usman, won. Then he fought an old Tyron Woodley, beat him, and then he went and lost to Usman again.
Yeah,
and then he just beat an old Masvidal.
Yeah, that was the other thing Muhammad brought up was like, I'm not, Tyrone Woodley on my fucking losing streak. I'm not fucking Jorge Masvidal who didn't want to fight and who knows how long. Like that's a different fight.
I'll even bring it up here. Who Blue Muhammad? I clicked it on, so I'm just waiting for it to pop up.
There it goes.
You can make a case that looking at this, going back, he lost to Jeff Neal, so that's a big one right there. Like he lost to him by decision, and that's a top 15 guy very early.
Yeah.
He beat Diego Lima. You got the no contest to Edwards, the eye poke, but then he's beaten Damian Maia. But then you got Thompson and Luque. Thompson and Luque right there. Those are two top 10 guys right there who he avenged one loss to Luque way back, and then he beat Stephen Thompson. So, is that not better than Robbie Lawler and Tyron Woodley?
I mean, I don't even look at past records because here's the thing. If you were looking at past records in that Rafa Garcia versus Ronson fight, you were shocked with the result because it's who shows up, not who's shown up in the past. It's who shows up now, because that's why I said these guys are so close. One really solid training camp could push one over the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like if one of them just has the right camp, the right coaches with the right work ethic, they outshine the other. That's how close these guys are. It's like a hair's breadth. So it's like, I don't care who showed up in the past. I care who's going to show up that night, because there's been like I said, Pena Nunes, Everybody was sure Nunes was going to run through Pena. The Nunes who showed up was not up to the job.
You can call Colby Long for the Usman fights. Yeah, but he fought him twice. He learned for the first one. He still didn't beat him the second time. And
but
then
also, he didn't really apply that knowledge to anything. That was my criticism for the longest time.
And he looked worse against Masvidal.
Well,
and he still won because Masvidal is just bad by honing. That's what he did. Whereas I saw a little bit of technique in Belal Muhammad with like the way he was circling around to his power hand. He's throwing the leg kick up when he was getting ready to throw him. Anytime Luque would try and go after him with 2 punches, he'd roll to the outside and then start throwing at him. He'd find those entries in. And the way that he did the entries was very clever, which Colby does as well. But Colby lacks the striking aspect of it. He could get out a lot of volume, but he's not patient with it.
Well,
it's
here's
just
the
like
thing
you said, it's chaos.
Right. Here's the thing about learning from your past fights, right? The thing about it is like you have to apply that knowledge for it to matter. So he fought Usman. Then where did he go? He went to Tyrone Woodley, who was on like his losing streak. Okay.
Yeah.
Then who did he fight? I think he fought Usman again after that, didn't he? So he fought Usman again.
Listen to this. Colby fought like Usman, then he fought Woodley. Guess who Woodley fought after he lost to Colby Covington?
Didn't Woodley fight?
He got knocked out by Luque.
That's right. It was Luque.
And then that's where he got cut.
Well, even going from that, right?
Yeah.
So he fights Usman, then Tyrone, then he fights Usman again, and then he goes to Jorge Masvidal. And this is what I said after the second Usman fight. I was like, okay, he's changing his style. He has to learn how to work within that style. He doesn't have the power. He could come up with some other way to make that work, but it's not the fights that make the fighters. It's the training camps. It's when you have 3-4 uninterrupted months of experts helping you develop your game. The fight is the test, is how did you do over that 3 or 4 months? So what was the next test he put himself up for? Jorge fucking Masvidal is not a test. He didn't even need to go to a training camp to beat Jorge Masvidal. Belal has been looking for hard fights. This Luque fight was not an easy fight for him. One mistake and he would have gotten fucking knocked out. If he had come in with the wrong strategy, he would have gotten knocked out. Even that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight is not really the best matchup for him because Stephen Thompson can move just as well as he can. It just so happened that, Belal was able to dominate him in the wrestling, which in the past, Thompson has had better takedown defense and he's been able to get back to his feet more effectively. But then who does Muhammad call out? Before he ever called out Covington, well, first he wants Usman, which I already think that's a bad matchup for him. He also called out Chimaev before Chimaev was number 3. He's like, I'll fight Chimaev. Give me. He's looking for the hardest matchups to give him the hardest tests. Kobe wants the easiest matchups that require no real work, no real growth, just coasting. Because why wasn't he fighting Burns? Why wasn't he fighting Chimaev? Why wasn't he fighting Luque? Why wasn't he fighting Leon fucking like he could have taken a real name, but he chose not to. He went for the fucking Masvidal fight. He wanted to go down to fucking I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is either.
But he wanted to go down to fight a dude at 150 and Dustin Poirier. That would not have been a challenge. You saw the Masvidal fight, it would have been that again. Because Poirier has basically no ability to grapple relative to Colby Covington. Like that would not have been a hard fight. He's not calling out hard fights that would be difficult tests that would require him to grow.
I think he's just coasting, going back and forth. Whereas you see Muhammad, who's going straight up, kind of like
he's trying to grow. He wants the hardest opponents, guys that are not good matchups for him.
Everybody forgets that when he fought Leon Edwards, he was 13 and Edwards was like 3 or 4.
Yeah, he was up.
So he was making the move up and then the eye poke. So he was taking a chance there, kind of like Chimaev took the chance against Burns. It's just that ended in the eye poke. Right. But then he came back after that and then fought Maya and then Thompson back to back. And two guys where it was right around that span because Maya was up there at 8 still. And he fought him moving up. And that was a challenge with grappling. He only got taken down one time. out of 20 attempts, because of his balance. He was able to keep his balance, and he was able to use his strike in there. And then he goes against Stephen Thompson in a completely different fight. He was going up against a striker. What did he do? He mauled him with the wrestling and was able to take him down. Then he comes into this one, and it was a little bit of combination of both. So against Luke, you've seen in every fight that he's had, he's come in with a totally different style, per se, where I feel like Colby, it was great. It was great. Has looked the same way in every fight. He smothers you in front of you. He takes you down, holds you down, and then he punches at you, but it doesn't do any damage to you because he doesn't hit you hard. Whereas going into a fight against Colby, Belal Muhammad's going to come in a completely different guy, game plan wise, because it's all about the game plan for him, because he's never looked the same way as he did the previous fight.
Yep, which is a stronger case for what I said. It's not the fights that make fighters, it's the training camps. The fight is the test to see how you did during training camp. And as far as I can tell,
but you can't use this. Usman better than Colby better than Belal. So a trainer can't save him. There's no proof that shows that Colby is better than Belal now.
All two different fighters, it's who shows
two
up.
different fighters, two different fighters at 2 different points. Colby had 2 shots, lost, and I'm a fan of Colby. And he had 2 shots, he's lost. He hasn't really fought anybody in that top 5. He fought Masvidal, who is at 7. That's
and then he wanted to go to fucking 155. Like, he's not growing. That's the problem. Is there's no growth. And with Belal, it's back. It's over.
But Thompson went and beat.
He's hard to put on his back, though. That's the thing. He's not the easiest to put on his back.
The blueprint was Gilbert Burns found out the blueprint with that. It's how you have to attack him after the first attempt, and then just keep on attacking it, and then you finally can get him with the single leg. And then he said knockouts, money, but Covington doesn't get knockouts.
He does, and the money. Fair enough. Do what you got to do, but it's a trade-off. If you're going for those money fights that are easy wins like Masvidal and Poirier, you're not growing as a fighter. You're not getting any better. Those are fights you don't even need a real. You could just do what you've always been doing in your regular training camp and still win those. But like when he had the option to fight real names like Burns or Edwards or at the time Thompson was still up there, he had an option to fight names that would have been challenging matchups for him and made him grow as a fighter. He decided to go, no, I want to fight Masvidal. No, I want to fight Poirier. He's not interested in growing at this point. Belal is. And that's the difference. That's why Belal shows up different every time, because he's growing. He's developing new skill sets every training camp, and he delivers.
And then on top of this, he did this fight in April when he's doing Ramadan at the same time.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's rough. So that just adds levels to this fight that he did, that he was able to go 5 rounds. He can't eat because he's fasting, and he did training for the week or 2 before this. So it's like that comes into play with this one, and for him to look this way. And apparently this has been his 4th fight in April that he's done in his career. So it's like, that's just crazy. And he said, is 9 rounds versus Usman or versus more than Belal? You can't.
Doesn't matter. It's who shows up. Not who showed up in the past. It's who shows up that night.
Yeah, you can't calculate your rounds against one guy, because that fight against that guy is going to be different from another guy versus him, and then vice versa, because that's why you see all these matchups where you're like, oh, this guy beat this guy, now he's fighting this guy, so it's going to be the same outcome. No, because styles make matchups.
MMA math doesn't work.
Exactly.
You run into some issues if you start doing
who goes 9 with Usman. I'll say that. I'll say this. You know who went 5 rounds with him on 1 week's notice? Masvidal.
Masvidal did, that's true. Twice.
Yeah, he did.
Twice.
And then he got knocked out in the.
He went 7. 7 rounds.
7
Something
rounds.
Like that.
So he missed it by 2. Right. But he went that far with them, and Masvidal's nothing special.
No.
He
I think Sean Brady goes 9 rounds easy for the same reason, his wrestling and his endurance.
And we haven't even mentioned Shavkat.
Right, Shavkat's in that discussion, and I think Belal, I think he loses But I think it's because he can't get the wrestling going. If he figures out a way, like if let's say he fights Kazmat and finds a way to control Kazmat on the mat, I think he matches up well with Usman at that point. He hasn't reached that point of growth yet. So I agree, he doesn't beat Usman, but that doesn't really matter because it's not about when we're talking about Covington and Bilal, it's about who shows up that night, not who showed up in the past. No. I didn't say Usman runs through Colby. I said Usman runs through Bilal. No, I said Usman runs through Bilal, but Kobe's a different fight.
Yeah.
And because Kobe doesn't grow, it's a hard one to call. I don't know who wins that fight. They're so close. It really depends on who has the better training camp for me in the Bilal versus Kobe matchup.
But when he's on his back, it's over for Thompson.
Yeah, but I mean, he's historically shown like good takedown defense and stuff. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it to the top 5 in welterweight. There have been historically guys who could put him on his back.
What I want to see is Colby against Gilbert Burns. Because that'd be a totally different fight where he could actually prove it. And then
if he beats Gilbert Burns, then it's like, okay, cool, you got it. Yeah, I'm on the Colby train all the way.
Yeah, because he just went to war with Chimaev. He's fought Usman.
Well, if he looks as good as Gilbert Burns Thompson. And Chimaev looked, and he goes against Burns and does that, then it's like, then I think
fought Thompson.
He wins.
He's fought like 8 times in 2 years. He's put the work in. And I think that would be a good challenge for Colby because he has to worry about the knockout power of Gilbert Burns and then the jiu-jitsu of it because he can take down him, but then Gilbert Burns can find the holes in that to get the back of him. It present a good one. He said, I'm okay with that. He can't grow past his.
It depends on who he fights, honestly. Like, it depends.
I mean, you're bad. You're bad when you're up late. That late bedtime of yours is into you.
But I don't know. I think right now he's going to have to grow a little bit more because honestly, Usman's not giving him the title shot anyway. I think it's going to be Edwards. But like, you give him some time to simmer. There are some real monsters coming up this division that are going to make or break Muhammad. Sean Brady is one of them. Shavkat's another. There's some guys who are unranked in welterweight that are looking really, really good on their way up. I think Ismagulov is lightweight. I'm trying to remember who the name I'm thinking of. Hold on. Oh, Gunnar Nelson is back in the talent pool, and he looked pretty good against Takashi Sato, but that's Takashi Sato. So we'll see how he does long term. Randy Brown has been looking pretty decent recently. Who's the other guy that I like? I'm looking through. Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells is the other guy.
The only reason he's doing that is because he's the guy with the title. And he sat a year without fighting when he could have fought 2 different guys and he ducked them to wait for Usman, like fighting John Jones 2 times or Gus. But he had to fight. Gustafsson had to fight several guys within that time before he got that second crack at him. So it's not like he just sat there and waited. Where like he fought Usman the first time, then he fought Woodley a year later, then waited a year to fight him Usman again.
Yeah.
When he could have fought a couple of times within that, like they had matchups where he could have fought Edwards, he could have fought Burns, and then he just said no to him.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how soon Bilal gets a shot at Usman, but like there's going to be some guys who are coming up that if he can't deal with them.
Yeah,
like those are his opportunities to grow. I think if he gets through Shavkat, Sean Brady, and Chimaev, then like, okay, I think he matches up well with Burns at that point. I think he's had enough growth to be able to match up well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's not going to be able to stand with Kazmat without any power. He's just not. Same thing with Shavkat. Yeah. You can't stand against Shavkat if you have no power because he's got too good of all the skill sets and the knockout power. Sean Brady, he could maybe skate through with Sean Brady and maybe try to out wrestle him, but Sean Brady's really good and he does have a lot of natural power. So like at some point, Bilal's going to need to address that shortcoming in his striking. It's a matter of can he do it? So it remains to be seen because I think those are the guys that could potentially knock Bilal out of that top 5 and determine how he's going to match up with Usman in the future. Because I think if he doesn't get through them, then he's going to be forever floating in that 10-5 range. Like if he can't beat those guys, that's where he's going to end up. Maybe he goes down, finds that he has a size advantage at lightweight. I don't know. But like if he can't get through those 3 dudes, then I think he's stuck in that 5 to 10 range for the rest of his career.
Exactly. Well, we'll wrap things up with tonight's show. Woo. Thank you, Insight, for coming in down the stretch to give us some nice argument there.
Throwing
I always
fire.
like that. I don't hate you. I don't hate you too much right now. Did you see what I said? I said I don't know where you live.
I know where you live.
He said, "Come by.
Pull up, son. Pull up.
Yeah, pull up, though. Do the COVID shuffle." He knows what I'm talking about there with that one. But that was a great show. It was actually one of our shorter shows,
right? As of late.
Yeah, as of late. But we will be back next week, of course, to recap UFC Vegas 52, which is headlined by Amanda Lemos versus Jessica Andrade.
Weak card.
It's a weak card, and there's only like 11 fights on the card on top of that. So that's going to be boring. Yeah. So, but then again, we got a lot of different things. We got that. We're going to recap PFL week 1, which is tomorrow. We're going to do both Bellator 278 and 279. You got 2 of those. So I think we're just going to do the recap of the co-main event and the main event for all 4 fights. So we'll give us 8 fights to break down there so we can get through all the cards instead of being here for 6 to 7 hours.
2 in the morning.
2 in the morning. Exactly. And then on top of that, do news. So, yep. So other than that, that'll wrap things up with today's show. As always, please hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the like button as well if you haven't done so already. And please hit us up in the comment section if you're watching this video after the fact. But of course, as always, give a shout out to our sponsor, High Tide Herbal. Use promo code CageMyIQ10 at checkout to receive 10% off your next purchase. I am your host, Cage. This is my co-host, Miles. And we will see you guys next week for another edition of Cage My IQ Weekly Recaps.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching this episode of Cage My IQ on the Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sportsbox Show, Twitter at Sportsbox Show, Instagram at The Sportsbox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thank you for joining us.